Today, it's Alex Burns' turn. We sit down and talk about life as a fantasy basketball analyst. Let's go balls deep.
I could bet all of the riches that I ever had.
Welcome to another episode of the Balls Deep Fantasy Basketball Podcast. I'm Adam King, your host at AdamKing91 on Twitter is where you can find me. FBIbasketball.com is our website. Jump over there. You can head into our Discord server. Still rolling along, very busy over there with all of the Dynasty content that Matt Lawson's got coming out at the moment. He launched his, by the time this comes out, he will have launched his show a couple of months ago probably, and hopefully he's running weekly episodes. Today, we're just continuing on talking with analysts during the off-season about what life is like writing for fantasy basketball. Today, it is Alex Burns. Alex, how are you, good sir?
Adam, man, I'm doing well. And that intro just pumped me up. I know we don't have any real-time fantasy hoops to talk about, but man, I'm feeling the itch right now. Happy to be here.
Yeah, we don't. I mean, we've got a little bit of playoff stuff going on. By the time, as I said, this comes out, it probably will be. So what are we in? So we're recording this end of April, so it's probably going to be the finals may have even finished. And going by I know sort of who you write for, and going by your Twitter profile, you'll be hoping that Miami are in the finals. They are in the semi-finals somehow. So before we get into the away from fantasy basketball, just your thoughts on the Miami series and how they upset the Bucks and what you think they can do against the Knicks now moving forward.
Man, playoff Jimmy. That's all I got to say. He's spectacular. Just an awesome series. He's probably the greatest playoff basketball player that we've seen in a while. I'm not going to say all time, but just the way he can completely shift his game from kind of just relaxes in the regular season, takes some nights off, and then playoffs he turns into prime Michael Jordan. It's pretty spectacular. But I don't know. I mean, people want to make excuses. Giannis was out for, I think it was 2 games, and then he played 11 minutes of game 1. But I don't know. I mean, no excuses. Miami won. We get the Knicks Sunday, which is, tomorrow at the time we're recording this. So game 1 will be good. I don't know. I mean, not really finals expectations, but I mean, I don't think anybody would be really shocked if Miami kind of made another run.
Yeah, and I mean, I don't think anyone predicted them to even come out of the first round. So who knows? No. The Knicks, I mean, they beat the Cavs pretty comfortably, but I don't think they played that well. I think Julius Randle's injured. It was really just Jalen Brunson and a few guys stepping up. So, I mean, a lot of pressure on Jimmy Butler. He's going to have to continue to play really well without Tyler Hero there, especially. And yeah, I mean, I can imagine as a Miami fan, obviously Jimmy, he was spectacular. He's special in the playoffs. Would have been good if he could have just got them to the 6th seed or something so you didn't have to go through the play-in tournament and all of that stress. Mm-hmm. But in saying that, the Bucks were obviously a good matchup. So maybe he knew something that we didn't know.
Yeah, I mean, the Knicks are good too. I mean, I was thinking about this the other day. I mean, it's been a little bit more than 20 years since the Heat Knicks, their playoff dogfights of the 90s, and it kind of has the opportunity to get renewed here. And I mean, if you look at the Cavs Knicks series, I kind of went back and watched some of the games. It's off topic, but I can't believe how long the Cavaliers let Darius Garland play one-on-one against Jalen Brunson. It was in the first couple of games, he just could not hang. And it took him, I don't know when they made the adjustment, but I know they put Okoro on him, Isaac Okoro, kind of towards the end. But geez, it was such a long wait to make a change there, and it really just hurt. The Knicks are good. Hey, I don't say they're big rivals for Miami currently, but they're not like the Knicks that missed the playoffs 17 times over the last 20 or so years.
No, and I do think that if nothing else, the playoffs so far have highlighted, I think, the importance of having a good coach, because I think like
Yes.
Spo is widely regarded as arguably the best coach, if not one of the top sort of 3 or 5 coaches in the league. And I think we saw that with how that series played out. But it really highlighted Mike Budenholzer and his inability to adjust rotations on the fly. I mean, the easy one, like Jimmy Butler just didn't seem to get double teamed a lot. Why weren't they playing Jay Crowder on him? I thought that's why they got Jay Crowder. Similarly with the Cavs, and the Knicks. I mean, Thibodeau, he makes some weird decisions during the season with his rotations and his minutes. But as you said, yeah, like Bickerstaff just didn't seem to be able to adjust. I don't know. I just think we often think that coaching in the NBA isn't super important because you've just got a bunch of talented guys and it's about player management and managing egos and that sort of thing. But I think we saw in the couple of these series the importance of having a coach that is actually a good coach. So that was off topic. The purpose of this is to talk about being an analyst and how we get to where we are and what we like to do away from the court. So we chatted just before coming on air. So Rotoballer is your main sort of site, the company that you work for, and then you do some rankings for fantasy pros as well. In terms of jobs, it is, and people have had a mixed response to this. Some are, some aren't. Is fantasy basketball writing your job, full-time job? This is what you do, or is it a hobby that's just like for me that has gone simply too far and takes up too much of your time, but you do actually have another job that you have to go to?
Yeah, no, this is not my full-time job. This is a hobby that has completely gotten out of control. You can ask my boss, you can ask my wife. It's addicting. But no, it's not my full-time job. Got into it probably around the pandemic, the beginning of the pandemic in 2020. I've listened to a couple of the episodes it's dropped, and some people have had similar time frames there. But started out for fun. I always played fantasy hoops, always played fantasy football. Got to start, doing some daily fantasy articles with Fantasy Pros a couple of years ago, and just one thing led to the other, and it's a hobby. I mean, I do get paid a little per content that I produce, but it's definitely not a full-time job.
No, okay, yeah, I think that's some are lucky enough to have it as a full-time
Yeah.
job, but there's not many of us that do. So when you're not watching a screen and watching basketball and writing basketball, what is it that you do for work?
Yeah, I sell houses. I'm a realtor,
Okay.
so I've done that for since I want to say 2019. I love it. It's fun. It gives me the flexibility to work on some stuff on the side that I'm passionate about,
Mhm.
like fantasy hoops and just following sports. So yeah, I mean it's pretty boring, but that's what I do. I sell houses.
Yeah, okay. No, you're the first realtor I've had on the show.
There
A
we
lot of
go.
guys do have some interesting work away from fantasy basketball. Now I know you have. Well, I mean, you've just said you have a wife who. Um, how supportive is she when it comes to your fantasy basketball passion?
I mean, words really can't describe how passionate she, or just understanding is the right word that she's
Yeah.
been. She comes from a family, they're not really big into sports. My wife's not really into sports. She, watches basketball vicariously through me. She loves Jimmy Butler. She'll watch Heat games and stuff, but she doesn't understand the passion that we have to write about fantasy basketball and look at lineup changes and analyze stuff. But she's been so supportive. I mean, I'm here right now. I'm in my office recording this, and she's got our 2 kids at home, and she's, cooking dinner. She's just so supportive.
Yeah, I can relate to that. My wife is also supportive for some reason. I don't know why she is, but she is. Given that her her interest in sport is zero. Her family has zero interest in sport.
Yeah.
My family is 100% sport, so we're very different in that respect. But she allows me to do this. and even allows me to do the job that I do, which my full-time job, which I love doing, but in the sector that I work in, the pay is not as good as what it could be working for the government, that sort of thing, which she does. So she allows me to do things that I'm passionate about, which I count myself really lucky. So wife, 2 kids you have. So how old are they? Are they still sort of little and running around a bit out of control?
Oh yeah, that's an understatement. My son he just turned 3 on March 31st, and then it's actually good timing. My wife and I just delivered our first daughter last month, so I think it was March 16th. Brought her into the world, and just been a whirlwind of an experience for us. It's been so fun. A lot of people said, like, you have a 3-year-old toddler, newborn. It's going to be interesting. We couldn't feel more blessed. I mean, it's just been such a good fit, and we're just really happy with our family. So
Yeah, look, that it is. It's that time. I mean, my kids now, their birthdays are coming up, and they're almost 13 and 16. So I'm sort of quite a bit ahead of where you are in terms of kids and family. But we look back, we look back at photos and we look back at videos from when the kids were that young, and it is, yeah. I mean, if any advice I would give to any parents is really just live in the moment and enjoy it, and because it moves by so fast, and now, like, my daughter's got a job, she can get her license soon. She's got questions about boys and life and high school, and so
yeah.
it does shift very quick. But yeah, you are going to be in for a busy few years, definitely. And glad look, I mean, simply the fact that she's allowing you to come on here when you've got a 1-month-old.
That's what I mean. That's what I mean. It's crazy. I mean, it's super supportive, and it just feel blessed. So
Yeah.
yeah.
So second question, I guess. So we've got your fantasy, we've got your job, and obviously family would take up a sizable chunk of whatever free time you do have. But other than sports, family, and work, what is it that you enjoy doing? Because I love movies and I love TV shows. So I like talking to anyone that also likes movies, but I understand that not everyone does like movies. So what is it that you sort of try to do, whether it's with your wife or by yourself or with friends, when you do have some free time?
Sure. So, like you alluded to it, family. Just really big into family time. Whether it's taking a little weekend trip to going somewhere, staying for a couple of days, quick trips, nothing major, or just going out to eat. Like, we're really simple. We're creatures of habit. We're not like, we don't travel a ton out of the state or out of the country, but just little things that we can do around town. My wife and I both love food. And when I say that, I mean, like, just different cultures and cuisines. And so going to different restaurants, and that's just a big hobby of ours. We try and have at least one date night a week. I know with our life now, it's pretty complicated to get some time away, but we're just pretty simple people. We don't do things, too crazy, kind of boring.
Oh, look, boring is good. And I think boring is, as you said, when you do have a young family, you need to be a little bit boring because you need to be there for the kids, but also important to find time to spend without the kids. Like, you do need to have that break, and
It's
that's
tough.
my work hat going on there, where I have to talk to families about mental health and looking after themselves, that sort of thing. So we won't go down that path too much. And so you're obviously a Miami fan. So do you live in that area?
So I live about, and the easiest way to say this, we'll just kind of use West Palm Beach as the main location, but I live about, say, an hour and a half north of Miami. So
Okay.
most people listening to this might not be familiar with Stuart, Florida, which is the specific town that I live in, but West Palm Beach is close enough. That's the major city that's nearby. So um, not too far of a trip. If you want to go to a Heat game, it's, from where I live, it's probably like an hour and a half, and that includes the Miami traffic, which a lot of people don't understand. It is brutal around the start of the game time. That's why the arena looks empty and everybody clowns the Miami Heat. It is rough around 7 o'clock, or people get
Yeah.
off work. But yeah, so I'd say about an hour and a half north of Miami.
Yeah. Okay. And I mean, I don't know where a lot of places are in America, but I know where the states
Yeah.
are, and so I roughly know where Miami is. Um, and yeah, so I know some of the areas that you said, but that's from movies and that sort of thing. So that's our exposure to America here. Um, so yeah, I mean, you've said Miami. You've obviously supported. I mean, your Twitter um, profile says insufferable Heat lifer. So you've obviously been a Heat fan since you were small. Any favourite memories? I guess there have been a few titles there. Obviously, the LeBron era when he was there. The title they won with Shaq and with Dwayne Wade. For me, I that one sticks out. Like I'm not a Heat fan per se, but that that title that they won back then was I just think the LeBron ones were sort of pretty expected. We're
Mhm.
good. We're probably going to win here. Any moments that sort of stand out for you as memorable?
A bunch. When I say insufferable, I mean that literally. I'm a diehard Miami Heat fan. One moment I would say is to reference the 2006 finals versus the Mavericks. I was 12 years old at the time, really probably 3 years into really following them closely and just, knowing the players and all that stuff. And I'll never forget my dad surprised me with tickets to game four. And so Miami, if you're not familiar, we're down 0-2, won
Yep.
game three because of Dwayne Wade's heroics. And then game four was a big swing game. We could have tied the series up. We had nosebleed seats. I remember we could like touch the back wall of the arena. It was way, way up there. But it was my first NBA game I ever went to, and my dad worked hard. He bought tickets, and it's just a memory that he and I went down there, and I'll never forget. Being in the arena, Dirk Nowitzki, the crowd was so ruthless to him, and I remember in a previous interview or something leading up to the game, he said he likes to listen to David Hasselhoff or something as a
Yeah.
artist.
Yeah.
And every time he shot free throws, the whole crowd would just David Hasselhoff. And it was just as a 12-year-old, it was just funny. And I've never been in an
Yeah.
environment like that. And that would probably be the moment that sticks out for me above the rest.
Yeah. Wow. I can't. I've never even been to an NBA game, so it's hard to
Yeah.
imagine. Yeah, an NBA game, but even more so a game of that magnitude. Which, as you said, that was a swing game in that
Mm-hmm.
series, and the Heat really got the momentum. I don't remember it super well, but because for me, basketball was. I mean, I grew up playing basketball, so from the time I was 6 or 7, um, followed the NBA as much as I could, but it was very limited here in Australia. Our access to the NBA was really one game a week, and it was usually on at midnight, 11 o'clock at night. It was just a replay of a game. Um, so there was a lot of reading newspapers and reading box scores and articles, and there was a magazine. Can't remember what the magazine was called now, but there was a magazine we used to buy, came out every week, I think, but it would be about 2 days late here in Australia because we'd get everything a bit delayed. So um, followed the NBA as much as we could. Michael Jordan was the the person that we all loved, sort of through the 90s. Dennis Rodman was my favorite player.
Oh,
Um,
wow.
that's why my profile is Adam King 91 for Rodman. My license
Interesting.
plate on my car has 91 on it. I have a Rodman tattoo. I'm pretty passionate about a
Oh,
lot of
whoa.
sports things. So this is going a bit off topic, but I used to really love wrestling as well. So the WWF and then WWE. So both. My son is named Hunter after Triple H. Um, I've got multiple Triple H tattoos. Both of my kids' middle names they're named after football players here in Australia. So I get being passionate about sport
Yeah.
teams. But yeah, for the NBA around 2006, that's actually when I came back into the NBA. So because around 2000 I was 21 and I was more interested in partying and going out and
Yeah.
girls and all that sort of thing.
Living it up.
Once 2006 I was 21 27. So I had my wife now. We were together and settled down, and so started to get back into the NBA. And so that final series, as I said, that's why it sticks out for me, I think, because that's when I sort of started getting back into the NBA a lot. And yeah, and I didn't expect the Heat to win, I guess, because Dwayne Wade was very young still. Was it his rookie season or his second season?
He was drafted in 2003, so I think it was his
Okay, so
third
it was a
season.
few seasons. Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is interesting to think about. I mean, I know that was before Twitter, NBA Twitter, and social media was really a thing. I mean, imagine a player, third season in the NBA, leading a team from an 0-2 deficit in the finals to winning a championship and getting finals MVP. That would be, I mean, how would NBA Twitter react if that happened now?
Yeah, it just doesn't happen now.
No.
We didn't really have the super team back then. It was, and well, we're sort of moving away from that a little bit, but yeah, what he did at that age. I mean, he had Shaq there, obviously, but that wasn't peak Shaq. I don't think. Like it wasn't when he was in his prime. He had a lot of good support players, a lot of a really good cast around him, but yeah, it was just an amazing performance by him. So basketball is obviously a big passion for you. Is it something that you played growing up, or it was just through watching it?
Played. That was the first step, and then the basketball addiction moved into watching it. But playing was the first step for sure.
Yep. You played through school. I'm assuming. Any great heights in your basketball career? Would we find Alex Burns basketball if we Google that? Are we going to find some stats or some records?
You could. I played for a pretty good high school. My freshman through junior season, we were number 7 in the state of Florida. We went to nationals. I actually have a lot of funny stories about that. Like played against Quinn Cook. We played against Austin Rivers. You can Google a lot of stuff about. Because in 2012, 2013, 2011, a lot of those guys, Austin Rivers, Quinn Cook, they were at the prime of their high school careers, where they were number 1 player in the country, getting all the Ball is Life mixtapes, all that stuff. And I can't make myself sound cool. I rode the bench. My team was stacked. I actually played with Jacoby Brissett. I think he's the backup quarterback for. I could be butchering this, but last I checked, it was like the Cleveland Browns. Okay. So he was somebody that was on my team. He was a senior when I was a freshman, and he was getting recruited by all kinds of schools and stuff like that. But and then I transferred to another school my senior year. I played a lot. You could probably find my stats somewhere on the internet if you Googled hard enough. But yeah, I played all throughout high school.
And if you had to summarize your game, I guess, were you a scorer, defender, played inside, played on the perimeter?
That's a great question. Nobody's ever asked me that question before. I've never actually thought about it. So I was a guard. So I'm only 6 foot, 6'1", maybe somewhere in between there. So I wasn't a big man. I could dribble and I could shoot. When I was a freshman, I weighed like 150 pounds. I wasn't taking anybody to the rack or doing anything special. But I would say shooting is probably my special skill if I had to pick one.
Yeah, well, good skill to have in basketball.
Like Duncan Robinson.
Yeah, well, God, we could have a chat about him, couldn't we? Which we might. So he gets roasted a little bit, or the Heat get roasted a little bit for the contract that they paid him. And then this year he was basically out of the rotation for significant portions of the season, but he's had to come back in during the playoffs with Tyler Hero out. I think he's done a pretty good job. He's done what they need him to do. He's spread the floor. He's hit some threes. He's sort of a perfect example of being in the right place at the right time. So he's because I watched him at Summer League in 2019, and we thought it was his second year. I think he had done a year, and then he was one of those players that played in the Summer League in his second year as well. And Tyler Hero was there as well on that Miami team. And we saw Duncan Robinson. We thought, he's a good shooter, but he's not really going to amount to much. And then I think just over the next 2 years, the importance with Steph Curry and the importance on stretching the floor and 5 out, and it snowballed and snowballed. And Duncan Robinson was someone that teams hadn't scouted for too much, I think, and he was able to get open and do what he needed to do. And then the Heat paid him a lot of money to do that. And now he's not in the rotation until obviously being forced into the rotation. What are your thoughts, I guess, on where the NBA is headed in that regard? Like we saw that 2-3 year period, as I said, where Steph Curry was, he still dominates, but his 3-pointers that he was taking were ridiculous. But now we've got all these players taking shots like that. And for me growing up, that was, if you put up a shot like that, you were pulled off the court. Like that. Oh yeah, that just didn't fly. And I think it is starting to settle down a little bit now. But what are your thoughts on like someone like Duncan Robinson? Do you think he has a future, like thinking ahead maybe 3 years, if we continue regressing a little bit in terms of the need for perimeter scorers? Do you think he has a future?
Yeah, I think he has a future. I think what made him a really good shooter, in my opinion, is he could shoot on the run. And so it wasn't like you just put him in the corner. The Heat were running designated handoffs with him and Bam, and it was motion. And it just kind of like what made Curry and the Warriors so good is there was just so much movement and defenses just get overwhelmed. So I think there's a future, but I think, man, with him, if he's not making and taking threes consistently, he's a liability defensively. He doesn't have the footwork to stay in front of faster defenders. Teams hunt him on pick and rolls if he's in the game. So if he's not hitting threes or playing with confidence on offense, he's really a liability. So I think with him, I really think it just goes with confidence and being able to take and make shots. If he can do that, I think he'll stick around because he is one of the most elite shooters in the game. I still think he is. I really think with him, it's more of a confidence thing. And you could just see, like, once he started, I think it was 2021. It was the season after we paid him after 2020. You could tell he just like overthought about everything. Nothing flowed. There was no fluidity to his shot. It was just totally lack of confidence. And he started that podcast too, which is probably what got his mind off of focusing. But to answer your question, I do think I agree with you. I think the NBA is starting to slow down a little bit from just Steph Curry pulling up from just inside the half court line. If you can defend like average in the NBA, I think you have a future. But teams now on scouting reports, if you watch a basketball game, all it is now is adjustments. It's crazy, like James Harden, LeBron James, players like that, just hunting for mismatches on defense. So if you can't hold your own, it's going to be tough to stick.
Yeah, look, and I'll use that to transition to the final topic, which I think did I send you a copy of the questions? Did you know this question was coming? So the last question is a little bit about where the game is headed, but specifically around one player, Victor Wembanyama. So looking ahead, we're obviously, by the time this comes out, we'll know where he's been drafted, but at this point we don't. We know he will go number one. I think we can agree on that. Everyone can agree on that. So looking ahead to next season, from a fantasy perspective, a two-part question. Where would you be comfortable drafting him based on what we know now, and knowing what we know about fantasy and hype and how analysts can impact ADPs, that sort of thing? Where do you think his ADP will be in relation to where you would be comfortable drafting him? Do they line up? Because for most people, they don't.
No, and I think every year, especially at this time, people put out early rankings. I'm working on that myself, and I think we overanalyze stuff, mainly probably because we're bored and we really just need fantasy hoops, and so we're trying to find something to do. I'm not going to say I'm like glass half empty on him when it comes to fantasy. Like, I think he is the most talented prospect we've seen I mean, I don't know where you think, but I know LeBron was 2003. He's probably the most talented fantasy prospects, even more than LeBron. Um, I really don't know at this point where I would draft him. I'm torn on it just because, I don't want to compare him to Chet, but that body style and I just it's going to be hard for me to watch him compete against guys like Joel Embiid and Nikola Jokic and just to see if he can hold his own. And I'm probably a little bit too negative than the consensus by thinking like that. But I mean, if he can put together threes, blocks, and rebounds and the stocks that we talk about often, I mean, he's going to be at least a second round value. I mean, I think that's his floor in here when we saw what Walker Kessler did to close out last season with blocks and rebounds and points. So I would say floor is probably like late second round, but I would draft him end of the first round right now.
Yep. Yeah, look, I've had everyone's got their own opinion on Wembanyama, obviously. I would say if I'd actually written down what people were telling me, which I haven't, the consensus for where people would like to get him is around pick 30. So sort of mid third round would be ideal. But pretty much every analyst agrees that is not going to happen. There's no way he falls that far.
No.
ADP, I think, will start probably second round, like late mid-second round. And I think by the time we hit peak draft season in early mid-October, his ADP will be up right around the turn, I think.
Yeah,
I don't know.
If you want him on your roster for fantasy basketball, I mean, you're going to have to reach. That's just the easiest way to put it. I mean, we haven't seen a player hyped like this since before LeBron coming out of high school. So, I mean, you're going to have to reach for sure.
Yeah, a lot's going to come down to his blocks. As you said, that's one of his key elements, I think, initially out of the gate, because the scoring might be a little bit up and down. He's going to be up against these, as you said, big bodies, Joel Embiid, Nikola Jokic. I do think wherever he goes, he will probably play power forward. Whoever drafts him will try to keep him out of the paint, and so he doesn't have to bang up against these big bodies. That, I mean, if they are playing him at the 4, does that impact his shot blocking a little bit? Maybe if they're playing him away from the basket, I don't know. But he does have, I mean, we've seen from his highlights, he does have the ability to defend the wing and block shots from some really, really weird positions, just with his length. So I've got him, I just opened up my rankings. So I've got him at 35 in my early rankings. I feel like I'll bring him in, but I've got him sort of around the area with Evan Mobley, Walker Kessler, Nick Claxton, Miles Turner. So there's sort of a big run from what I've got in my rankings already. There's quite a big run there from sort of the middle of the third round to the end of the third round. Bam Adebayo's sort of in that group as well, where people who missed out on a centre early will go for a centre. And I think the importance on blocks, we saw it this year. There weren't many players you would consider a shot blocker. And part of that, I think, is the fact that the game has moved away from the basket a lot. So big guys like Rudy Gobert, their value has gone down a bit because they don't have the ability to defend out on the wing. So I think there will be an importance on blocks through that range there. But we'll see. And I mean, looking at, if you remember back to this draft season, the one we just had, there was, for me, I think the ideal spot to draft in your league, in a standard 12-team league, was towards the sort of back end of the first round. If you didn't get the first pick, or maybe the second pick, anywhere from about pick 8 or 9 was a really good spot. And looking ahead to next season, I actually think that's going to be even more so. Like, I think from, I'm opening up again, after about pick 8 again, I've got guys like Anthony Davis, James Harden, Kevin Durant, LaMelo Ball, Porzingis, Jaren Jackson, Donovan Mitchell, Kawhi Leonard, Kyrie Irving, Karl Anthony Towns. All these guys can be first rounders, but you might be able to get one of them as low as pick 19. So I think
brilliant.
Yeah. So I think So you mentioned you've got some ranks, or you're working on some
Working
ranks.
on them.
Any sort of teaser, any idea on when they will be available? Because I like reading ranks.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm actually working on them this week, and I've kind of been tweaking them and stuff. I have a platform through Fantasy Pros that I kind of go on, and it's online, and I'll release them. I'll send them to you to look over before I do. But I can give you a teaser that I'm probably going to rank Shea Gilgeous-Alexander pretty high this year. So after being able to steal him in every draft last season, that was glorious.
Yeah, I think I spoke with Alex Reclean a week ago in real time, but I don't know when in terms of when these shows are released. He has also got some rankings out as well, and our rankings were eerily similar, which I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing. It's probably a good thing. It means we're thinking the same thing. But we also have Shea quite high. I have him at 4. So I don't know where you've got him, but I've also got Tyrese Halliburton at 5. So I've got those sort of young guys there. So we'll wait to see where you have him. By the time this is released, you'll probably have those rankings out.
They'll be out.
And I mean, much like me, I'm assuming you revisit them every week or two and make any tweaks or adjustments based on, once the draft happens, we'll have to make some adjustments. For Wembanyama, final question, and then I'll let you get back to the kids and back to the wife. Where have you got a preference in terms of where you would like to see him go in the draft?
No, not really. I mean, I'd like to see him. I don't know what the odds are off the top of my head with like the lottery and stuff like that. I mean, Houston could be a pretty interesting landing spot for him. Being able to play with a really good passer, an Alperen Sengun. I don't know what that would do to Jabari Smith stretching the floor. How they could play and coexist. That I think would be a really fun team for him to go to. Just Nick Nurse, new coach, or is it Ime Udoka?
For Houston, it's
I drew a blank. It's one of those two. I drew a blank on it. But either way, new coach, new system. I think it'll be beneficial for the entire team of young guys that are have shown a lot of promise.
Udoka.
So
Udoka.
Okay,
Yep.
Gotcha. So I mean, great coach. Obviously someone who has good pedigree. So I think if he goes there, I think he's in a good spot. And again, the point being, Sengun and his ability to pass the basketball and create for others and play make. I mean, there's not a lot of players that can do that at the center spot. So, but also to your point about Wembanyama, it's so true. If they play him at the 4, it might take him out from the paint. It might impact rebounds or blocks a little bit. We've seen that with Anthony Davis when he, for whatever reason, refused to play center over the last couple of years for the Lakers and insisted on playing the 4. So, it's something to keep in mind. But I would probably say the Rockets. I would love to see him go. I think that'd be fun.
Yeah, and the Rockets have. And I only know this because I've been listening to Josh's podcasts and Matt's got his dynasty stuff. So the Rockets, Pistons, and Spurs all have, I think, a 14% chance of landing him. And then I think the next is the Hornets, who have a 12 or 12% or something. I'd love to see him on the Hornets because I think him and LaMelo, they've got Mark Williams as their center. I just think in terms of their build, they've got they're probably going to have Miles Bridges back, whether you agree with that or not.
Just the truth.
It is what it is. He's a talented player. We know that. So indiscretions aside, I mean, I don't think any of us condone what he did. Absolutely. And if he was out of the league, I wouldn't have an issue with that at all. But
absolutely not.
We have to deal with what's in front of us, and that is that he will miss the first 10 games, I think, and then he'll be available. And having him, Terry Rozier, LaMelo, PJ Washington, I still think has a little bit to offer. Kelly Oubre, I don't know if he'll be there, but I just think that could be very interesting. But yeah, as you said, I don't really mind. I think these teams that we were a bit worried about, like Detroit and Houston, in terms of their if he goes to Detroit or if he goes to Houston, how is he going to be used? Because Stephen Silas or Dwayne Casey have no idea how to coach.
It's awful.
That's not an issue now because they're both gone. So it's, as you said, Udoka will utilize him the right way, hopefully, and he will play. And I think he'll be a little bit like Anthony Davis in that he will probably play the 4 for 5 years, 6 years, whatever it is, and eventually he'll transition to being a center. I think just purely because of his size and they've already come out and said we don't want him bulking up, which I think is the right move because we saw with someone like Yao Ming, as he got further into his career and got bigger and stronger, his joints, his body almost failed him, and so I think they want to ensure that Wembanyama has a long career and not a 7-year career that's really good, but a bit stop-start, and then he has to leave early because of ongoing knee concerns, that sort of thing. So,
yeah, and I would say like 2 things, really quick on that. One thing I think we can both agree on is that I don't want him to go to the Pistons. I know that Dwayne Casey's no longer there, but I don't think we can afford mentally to have another big man in that mess. I mean, James Wiseman in the situation now. I mean, we all know if you follow the fantasy basketball world and a lot of the analysts that the Pistons have had a logjam at the 5 and Big Ben spot. But that's one thing. And then the other thing is, and this is just a thought, I'm not comparing both players. They're obviously completely different, like talent-wise, I would say. But I wish we got a chance to see Chet play this year because I think that would give us a little insight to how the NBA would react to a player of Wembanyama's skill set, frame, caliber, somebody who's really thin but tall and lanky and can shoot the ball and stretch the floor. So I think if we had a little, inkling of what Chet Holmgren was like in the regular season, not just the preseason, playing against guys that are bigger than him, that are, more experienced, I would like to see what that would look like with that build and frame. And that could probably give us a better way to kind of picture how Wembanyama will be in the NBA. But it's just my thought.
Oh no, I agree. I think a lot of people compare Chet to Wembanyama just purely because of their build and their skill set, and you could almost. I mean, Chet's as we haven't seen him because of that injury. We saw a glimpse in preseason, and what we saw was good. So the Thunder will obviously want to get him out there in preseason this year. Wembanyama, it'll be interesting to see how Wembanyama is utilized at Summer League, because I mean, you would know Summer League, I've only been to one Summer League, but when I do eventually get back there, my friend and I who will go, we've already made it pretty clear, hey, we're just going to go to the first week and then we're not going to bother, because come after the first 2 or 3 games, all the teams rest their guys. They don't play their main guys. So we might only see Wembanyama for 1 or 2 games at Summer League and Chet likewise. But I think a lot of people, they do consider Chet almost a Wembanyama light kind of thing, sort of
maybe
a slightly watered down version. He isn't 7'5", which I think Wembanyama's reported to be now, which is just mind blowing that he's doing what he's doing. I don't know whether you saw the putback that he had off his own 3-pointer.
It was nuts.
I can't even comprehend that.
It was otherworldly.
Yeah. That's why he's being called the alien, because he's doing things that we haven't seen before. So otherworldly. It is going to be exciting. So I will let you go. We've gone over time here. You've got your rankings coming out, as you mentioned. Anything else planned during the off season in the lead up to the drafts?
Yeah, just content through Rotoballer. Thinking about doing some season reviews, just some interesting things and trends as we ended the year. I know you don't like to take a lot from the last couple of weeks of the season with lineups and rotations. It's usually just a moot point for next season's look ahead. But just taking a look at some trends that how players fit in on new teams. So content through Rotoballer, and also as we have free agency. I don't know what free agency will look like with some of the big names that are on the market this summer. But, one thing we did last year and we'll continue to do is put out some pieces just going over the fantasy impact of any transactions or trades that pop up. So I would just say content on Rotoballer, and then rankings released, and active on Twitter, giving advice as we get closer to the season and all that stuff.
Yep. Look, I think more and more of us we enjoy this time off, but it is important to just keep your foot in the door and keep some stuff coming out, because more and more of those casual fans are hanging around during the off season. So that will do it for today's show. Remember, you can check out all of our content at fbibasketball.com. Head over to the Discord server, that's always flowing nicely. You can follow us on Spotify, Google Podcasts, and Apple Podcasts. Love it if you could give us a thumbs up as we build our subscriber base. Until next time, catch up.
You just listened to another episode from the Fantasy Basketball International Podcast Network. Thanks for joining us. And for more information about joining our community, please check out our website at fbibasketball.com.